Message from the Senate, Mr. Speaker. I hereby announce that the Senate has concurred in and adopted the report of the Conference Committee on Senate File number 3133, an act relating to public safety. Senate has repassed said bill in accordance with the recommendation and report of the Conference Committee. Said file herewith transmitted to the House, and the message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Torkelson moves that Joint Rule 2.06 relating to conference committees be suspended as it relates to Senate File number 3133.
Recognize the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson. To your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is my motion. The conference committee met this morning and finished up its work. The conference committee's report's been signed by all 6 members, passed by the Senate earlier today, and I'd like to get a vote to suspend the rules today so we can take it up here also on the House floor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Discussion on the Torkelson motion to suspend the rules to take up a conference committee report. The member from Hennepin, Representative Portman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, better late than never. I support the motion to suspend the rules and recommend that we vote yes.
Further discussion on the Torkelson motion. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Conference Committee report on Senate File number 3133, an act relating to public safety. The conference report is addressed to the Honorable Michelle L. Fischbach, President of the Senate, the Honorable Kurt L. Doudt, Speaker of the House. We, the undersigned conferees for Senate File 3133, report that we have agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The conference report is signed by all 3 conferees on the part of the Senate and all 3 conferees on the part of the House. Torkelson moves that the report of the Conference Committee on Senate File 3133 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
Recognize the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson, on the motion to adopt the Conference Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will briefly go through the changes that were made in Conference Committee and describe the bill as it came back to the House today. This bill does take $10 million in funds from the Department of Vehicle Services special revenue accounts for the MNLARS special supplemental funding. There is a change in how that money is distributed. $9.65 million goes to the department, and $350,000 of that $10 million is going to the Office of the Legislative Auditor for hiring an information technology auditor to do a technical assessment of the MNLARS program and do a feasibility study on the MNLARS roadmap to complete this project. The Senate adopted our specificity on how the funds should be spent, adopting many of the numbers from work done by Representative Sarah Anderson, State Government Finance Committee. The Senate also added, the Senate language also does not allow for any adverse spending, and there is some new language in the bill that does give the department some flexibility if they feel the numbers that are specified in that section of the bill are too stringent. They can come back and request that those numbers be adjusted after the original numbers are passed. As I said, the Senate does the $10 million in funding and $350 to the OLA. There's a lot of language added by the Senate that establishes a committee to oversee the funding that might be passed in the future. That committee is a 6-member committee made up of House and Senate members, including the chairs and leads from the Senate and House Finance, Transportation Committees, and the Ways and Means and Finance Chair or their appointee. The big change, of course, big change I must report is that the clawback language that was part of the House bill as it left the House floor is no longer part of this bill. We do require detailed oversight of spending amounts. We do include minimum standards adopted by the House to provide oversight of the benchmarks. This bill does meld similar language from both bodies that had to do with oversight and progress reporting. This does include the House position of the request for information that requires the department to take a look at the possibility of hiring an outside provider to provide the software for the MNLARS DVS systems. And we do have language in here requesting that the governor continue to request an extension for the Real ID program. Finally, we added language that requires commissioners to certify in writing the accuracy of the documents. That was in the House bill, and the added language is added a severability clause to the bill just in case something would be found unconstitutional. That is a brief description of the bill as it's returned to the House, Mr. Speaker. I stand for any questions.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Clark. For what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honor to introduce the body to a
State your
guest
point of
who's...
personal privilege.
Point of personal privilege, thank you. It's my honor to introduce the body to a guest who is with us here today. Her name is the Honorable Hodan Abdullahi Shire, and she is a member, is a current Minister of Women and Human Rights Development in the Kalamud state of Somali. She was the Goodwill Ambassador for Women in Politics, and for the past 6 years, she has been a strong advocate against gender-based violence against women, children, and for the protection of women. She's also an advocate for no more female genital mutilation to end FMG in Somalia. Honorable Hodan Abdullahi Shire is here in Minnesota for the next few days. She's meeting with community members. She's a guest of Farhil Khalif, who is the Executive Director of the Voice of East African Women, and elected officials, and she's here to advocate for women and human rights issues. She will be a guest in the community tomorrow, and you're all welcome and invited to come to that event. I wanted to introduce the other people that are here with her on the interior. The Executive Director of Voices of East African Women, Farhil Khalif, who many of you know. Nadifa Osman, raise your hand. Nadifa, who you've also met, I think, over the years, who's a former minister in the Somali government and a member of parliament there, and now we have her back in Minnesota. Waris Mohammed, and who am I leaving off here? Is that it? Did I get everybody? Oh, Jawahir, there she is, okay. I wanted to introduce each of these women and tell you that they're all working here in our community, working on these issues. And I would ask you to give them a warm welcome, come up and say hello to them, and invite them to talk with you about the issues that you are working on for our Somali community here in Minnesota. Thank you.
Discussion on the conference committee report. The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and would Representative Torkelson yield for a
He will
question?
yield. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Torkelson. I was listening to your read through of the bill, and it appears that the major change was that we took the Senate position, the House took the Senate position on the financing of the bill, and that what the House got out of this was a look at contracting out and the prescriptive appropriations from the House are retained, but there is a wiggle room clause in case they are wrong. Is that an accurate summary of the bill?
Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you. That is certainly some of the highlights of the bill, as you've described. I would just add that adjustment language, the last piece you talked about, was new language that was not in either bill prior to the conference committee process.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first of the magical clauses that appear in conference committees, probably. So members and Minnesotans, today's Thursday, 3 weeks after the 1st of March when the contract notices went out, we could have taken the Senate language Most of the conference committee report is the Senate language, a couple minor changes, but we could have taken that on Monday. This work could have been done on Monday. It could have been done a week ago. It could have been done 2 weeks ago, and we had a vote 3 weeks ago. So what's happened since that time? We've had contractors that have left. We've had delays that are incurred because people have left. Those delays that were incurred because people are left are going to continue. So finally, 3 weeks after we knew there was a problem and had an opportunity to correct it, the conference committee report is here. So thank you for finally getting a conference committee report. We could have adopted the Senate language Monday, but we didn't. So I support adopting the message from the Senate, the conference committee report. I think this doesn't bode well for the rest of the session, that it took this long to work on this much that affects so many people, and we had knowledge that there was a problem and there was the need for problem solving to correct that problem. Procrastination, pride, or problem solving. We're finally at problem solving on one component of the many issues that are here in front of this body. And unless we work together closer on problem solving, problems aren't going to get solved. There are still problems after this bill with deputy registrar reimbursement, reform, responsibility. But this is just with MNLARS. Think of all the other things that are in our committees that we have to look at. 3 weeks wasted. And that inaction had consequences that this money now will have to start to resolve.
Representative Hortman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, the folks who agreed to do the MNLARS project had a job to do. And we can all certainly agree that they did not do the job well and they did not complete the work on time. But we have a job to do, too. And I think that Minnesotans should be very disappointed that it has taken this long for the legislature to get this work done. There is no excuse for it being March 22nd when we convene on February 20th for us to finally get this work done. There is no excuse for the layoff notices going out on March 1st and for us losing a quarter of the contractors. There's no excuse for us losing all that trained talent to help Minnesotans solve their problems. There's no excuse for failing to fund the helpline that Minnesotans will call when they're having trouble getting their tabs renewed. And so, members, we can complain all we want about the executive branch, but Minnesotans need to take a look at their legislature. And when they ask, is their legislator getting the job done in a timely fashion, they have a right to be very disappointed today.
Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to adopt the conference committee report on Senate File 3133 say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails, and the clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading, Senate File number 3133, as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk, Representative Torkelson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to make a few remarks before we get to a vote here. I would first like to thank everyone who was involved with this process. I realize the other side of the aisle thinks it was slow and that somehow I was lazy about this work, but I assure you that everyone involved with this has worked very hard to get this to the floor as quickly as we have. I'd like to thank the Senate and the staff of the Senate and the staff and the members of both sides of the conference committee who were willing to meet early this morning so we could get this to this floor today. There is one glaring omission from this bill, and that is the clawback provision that would have required the governor to actually take a financial interest in repairing this problem. He's decided after three and a half months of denying that there was any problem at all, he finally stepped forward and said, yes, I take responsibility. But that responsibility at this point has been only verbal. He has said nothing about and done nothing to help fix the financial situation here. We've tried to do that with our work, but the Senate would not accept that work. Just a couple of other issues that are coming forward before us. There's the original request, of course, was for $43 million. This is only $10 million, so yes, we will have some more work to do to evaluate that request and see if there's some way that we should or could address it. There was a number of provisions that came into this bill in the committee process, Representative Hansen, that are important pieces for the House. Sunday night, when the Senate put their language together without any input from the House, there are many House provisions that were not part of the bill, and this process over the last few days has allowed us to get these House positions into the bill, and I think that's very important to me and to our members, and it's the sort of thing that we should do. We can't have the governor and the Senate running this place. We have a voice in what happens here also. I've said all the way through this process, I'm going to cut my remarks short, but I've said all the way through this process that I want to give Commissioner Clybourne a chance to be successful, and this gives her that opportunity. She brings a new attitude to Minute. I hope that she can do that work efficiently and well and get Minute operating so that it does the work it's supposed to do for the citizens of Minnesota in a timely fashion. It's taken us some time to get this work done in the legislature, but it's taken Minute 10 years, and they're not done yet. This is unconscionable. We need better performance. This bill includes a lot of oversight that apparently is needed so that they can actually get their work done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. This isn't the last time you're going to hear MNLARS.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 124 ayes and 6 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by conference and its title agreed to.